It's been a few years since the Thruxton has been updated, despite advancements to the 1200cc Bonneville twin motor in the Speed Twin and the Scrambler 1200, but now it's finally here, the 2020 Triumph Thruxton RS. So in today's video we'll take a look at the specs and details of what is now the most powerful bike ever produced in Triumph's modern classic range. There are plenty of updates to the internals of the engine of the new Thruxton RS, many of which are inherited from their other Bonnevilles which have been released earlier this year. The changes include high compression pistons, revised ports and cam profile, and a secondary air system. But there are also plenty of lightened components including a low inertia crankshaft, a lighter clutch, balance shafts and rare earth alternator, magnesium cam covers and thin-walled engine covers. All of these changes amount to a 20% reduction in engine inertia, which translates to a motor that can rev harder and higher with a redline that is 500 revs higher than the previous Thruxton. Peak power is now at 103 horsepower as opposed to the 96 of the Thruxton R, and it's produced at 7,500 RPM rather than 6,750. So essentially more revs and more power. Peak torque remains at 112 Nm, but occurs 700 RPM lower down at 4,250 rather than the 4,950 of the previous Thruxton. So from the specs, this sounds like a pretty nice update to the motor with more top-end rush if you rev it, but also more torque and beef at the bottom. Riding modes of road, rain and sport remain, but have been updated to cope with the new figures, changing throttle response, traction control and ABS settings in order to suit the conditions. Lastly, on the engine, the catalyzer has been redesigned to meet imminent Euro 5 requirements, which might not sound that exciting, but at least it means they can legally sell the bike, and that is good news indeed. As well as adding more power, Triumph have also shaved some weight on the Thruxton RS. In fact, it's claimed to be 6 kilograms lighter than the Thruxton R, which should be pretty noticeable combined with that extra oomph. Triumph claimed that the weight savings come from the lighter engine components as well as the lighter battery. It's interesting that with the Speed Twin, Triumph used an aluminium cradle to save weight versus steel like the rest of the frame. This was a first for the Bonneville lineup, which has otherwise used frames made entirely from steel. But I was expecting this change to translate over to the new Thruxton, as it seemed like a logical enhancement given that the Speed Twin has much in common with this bike. However, there's no mention of it in the press release. Perhaps it wasn't worth the extra costs and complexity of manufacturing for some marginal weight savings. The Thruxton RS will be a kilogram heavier than the Speed Twin, with the Thruxton weighing in at 197 kilograms dry and the Speed 196. But some of this could also be down to the wheels too, as the Speed Twin uses cast aluminium and the Thruxton uses spoked wheels which are typically heavier. But all the same, the RS is still significantly lighter than the Thruxton R, and that's what many potential buyers will be comparing it to. The equipment used on the Thruxton RS is much the same as the Thruxton R, with the Showa adjustable upside-down forks remaining the same, as do the fully adjustable Öhlins shocks, although the springs of the shocks have traded yellow for a more muted black. However, the brakes do get an upgrade, with the radially mounted monoblock Brembo calipers being upgraded to their M50 model, as opposed to the M4.34 of the Thruxton R. I really don't know if anyone cares about this level of detail, but I compared the specs of these calipers line for line on the Brembo website, and essentially the difference is that the M50s are more compact, using 30mm diameter pistons as opposed to the 34mm of the M4s. Their compactness contributes to rigidity and therefore crispness at the lever, but they're also 100 grams lighter at 700 grams per caliper as opposed to 800 for the M4s. Tyres have also been upgraded, with the already good Pirelli Diablo Rosso 3s of the Thruxton R being swapped out for Metzeler Racetech RRs, which Triumph describe as super sticky. Generally, the Triumph Modern Classic range has been moving away from gloss and chrome and towards matte finishes and brushed metal like you'll see on the Speed Twin and Scrambler 1200, and the Thruxton RS follows suit. The engine has been blacked out with black powder-coated engine covers, cam cover and sprocket cover. Then there's the black shocks we've mentioned, as well as a new RS side panel design. The wheels also get black anodized rims and hubs to complete the new stealthier look. The RS will come in two finishes, with a jet black base option and a premium graphical finish which they call Matte Storm Grey and Matte Silver Ice. As with the previous Thruxtons, the RS comes with a single seat setup as standard, with a pillion seat accessory kit available as an option, which includes a dual seat and passenger foot pegs. As with the last Thruxtons and all of the modern classics, there are plenty of official Triumph accessories to choose from, including a Cafe Racer fairing, tail tidy, comfort seat, tank pads and security options. But one option that caught my eye was the Arrow silencers with carbon end tips, which is a change from the Vance & Hines of the previous Thruxtons. There are no pictures in the press kit, but Vance & Hines provided a carbon tipped exhaust for the Thruxton TFC, so I'd expect this one to look similar, so that should be very nice indeed. So in summary, that's more power, less weight, better brakes, arguably better looks, and possibly a carbon-tipped Arrow exhaust if you fancy the upgrade. That seems like a pretty sizable update across the bike to me, although whether or not it's enough to tempt existing Thruxton owners to upgrade will remain to be seen. What do you guys think of the new Thruxton RS? I personally prefer the blacked out look, and I'm quite into the new graphical paint job too. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm heading out to EICMA this week, so I'll be sure to report back with some first-hand footage of this bike. So if you want to see those videos and you're new here, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.